The galaxy was filled with rules that shaped the lives of every being who lived among the stars. On one planet, far away from Earth, the laws were older than the mountains and deeper than the oceans. These laws were created by the elders of a great alien society, and they were obeyed without question. Among the most unusual of these laws was one that stated the elder sister owned everything that belonged to the younger. Whatever the younger gained or loved was considered the property of the elder. This law was seen as tradition, and though many questioned it in whispers, no one dared to challenge it openly. On this same planet, a young human named Aaron found himself in the middle of these customs. He was not born there, but had arrived after his small ship was pulled by a storm of light through strange space. Aaron had grown up on Earth, where fairness was valued and kindness was considered strength. When he landed on this alien world, he expected danger, but instead he met faces that were curious and eyes that studied him like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Among those who noticed him were two alien sisters. The elder was called Nira, tall and calm, with a voice that carried the weight of command. The younger was Lyra, gentle in spirit, with laughter that softened the hardest of days. They belonged to a respected family, one that followed the law with pride. To Nira, tradition was not just a rule but a sign of honor. To Lyra, however, the law felt heavy, like chains around her heart. One bright evening, Lyra wandered near the crystal rivers that glowed under two suns. She slipped on a stone, and before she could steady herself, she was swept into the current. The river moved with sharp speed, carrying her toward a fall. Her cries echoed across the valley, but it was Aaron who heard them first. Without thinking, he rushed to her side. He had no fear of the waters, only the will to help. With strong arms and quick steps, he pulled her out before the river could claim her. Lyra, shaken but safe, looked at him with wide eyes full of gratitude. From that moment, Lyra held Aaron in her heart with deep respect. She spoke of him often, telling others of the human who had risked himself for her. In her voice there was admiration, and in her eyes there was trust. Aaron, though modest, smiled gently and said he only did what anyone would do. Yet in a land where laws controlled every bond, this simple act was not so simple. For by saving her, he became tied to her life, and by the old law, everything tied to Lyra was claimed by Nira. When word reached Nira, she came to see the human herself. She stood tall before him, her gaze steady, her presence firm. She thanked him with words that sounded both formal and distant. In her mind, she had already decided. By tradition, this human was no longer free. He was something her sister valued, and therefore he belonged to her. Nira did not speak it aloud at once, but her silence carried the weight of unspoken claim. Aaron did not understand at first. He thought he was being welcomed, perhaps even honored. He noticed the way others in the village looked at him with surprise, whispering as he passed. Lyra, however, grew quiet, her joy mixed with worry. She wanted to tell him of the law, but her lips trembled each time she tried. She feared that once he knew, the bond between them would change, for how could someone who saved her be treated as property by another? The days that followed were filled with unease. Aaron walked among the alien gardens, studying their glowing flowers and listening to the songs of their winds. He felt wonder in the new world, but also sensed a shadow in the air. Lyra followed him often, speaking with warmth, asking about Earth and laughing at his simple stories. Yet when Nira appeared, silence would fall. Her presence reminded them both of the law that hung over them. In the heart of this alien world, a quiet struggle began. A human who valued freedom stood beside two sisters bound by law. Lyra wished for kindness to be stronger than tradition. Nira believed law gave order to life. Aaron did not yet know that his path was now shaped by an ancient rule, one that might test not only his courage but also the bond between the sisters themselves. And so the story of the human and the law of the elder sister began. Under the twin suns and the watchful eyes of a world where tradition ruled above all, the village soon learned that Aaron was more than just a visitor. Some admired him because he was brave enough to save Lyra from the river. Others wondered if he would change the balance of their customs. The law of elder sisters was as old as their stories, and even the children were taught to accept it without question. Yet now a human, not bound by their traditions, had entered their lives, and his presence stirred questions that many had kept silent in their hearts. Aaron spent his days trying to understand the world he had landed on. He walked through the glowing fields, tasted fruits that sparkled like gems, and listened to the strange rhythm of the twin suns. Everything was new, and he tried to see it with open eyes. Still, he often noticed the way people looked at him as if he carried a secret he did not know. When he asked about it, Lyra's smile would fade and she would turn her eyes away. Lyra wished she could explain the truth, but each time she tried, fear rose in her chest. She did not want Aaron to feel like an object or a prize. To her, he was a friend, maybe even more, someone who had shown care without expecting anything in return. She admired his simple honesty, and in his stories of Earth she heard a life free of rules like the ones she had known since birth. Yet she also knew her sister Nira, who carried the law as though it were part of her own soul. Nira, on the other hand, began to visit more often. She would stand beside Aaron and ask him questions about his world. She listened carefully, not with the same warmth as Lyra, but with the careful watch of someone measuring value. In her mind, Aaron was already under her claim. She told herself she was only respecting tradition. Still, deep inside, she felt a growing tension. She saw the way Lyra looked at him and feared that her sister's feelings might cause disorder in their home. One afternoon, as the three of them walked through the crystal fields, Aaron asked a question that made both sisters freeze. He said he had noticed how careful people were around them, and wondered if there was something he should know. His voice was calm, but his eyes searched for truth. Lyra opened her mouth ready to speak, but Nira stepped forward. "There is a law here," Nira said, her voice steady. "It has guided our people for ages. It says that whatever the younger sister holds close, the elder has right over it. Since you saved Lyra and she values you, that means you belong to me." The words were sharp to Aaron, like cold wind on warm skin. At first he thought he misunderstood, but the silence that followed showed it was real. He looked at Lyra, who lowered her head, unable to meet his eyes. Aaron's heart grew heavy. He had never thought of himself as something to be owned. On Earth, freedom was a right, not a gift given by others. "I do not belong to anyone," Aaron said quietly. His tone was not angry, only firm. "I chose to help because it was right, not because I wished to be claimed." Nira's eyes narrowed slightly, though her voice stayed calm. "This is our law. It is not meant as insult, but as honor. To be under the elder's right means you are part of her world." But to Aaron, the word honor did not cover what he felt. He was grateful to be alive and to have met them, but he could not accept being treated as property. Lyra finally spoke, her voice soft but trembling. "Sister, perhaps some laws do not fit all. Aaron is not one of us. Maybe the rule should not bind him." Nira turned to her with a look that carried both surprise and warning. For the younger sister to speak against the law was rare, almost unthinkable. Yet Lyra's words were not shouted, only spoken with the weight of her heart. That night, Aaron sat by the river where he had first saved Lyra. The water glowed under the moons, and the wind carried whispers of the village. He thought of Earth, where choices were made by one's own will. Here he was caught in rules older than he could understand. But he also thought of Lyra, who smiled when he spoke, and Nira, who stood with strength. He knew this world was not simple, and his place in it was not yet clear. As the moons crossed above, Aaron decided one thing. He would not run. Even if the law pressed against him, he would face it, for he believed every life had worth beyond ownership. And perhaps by staying, he might show them that value could come from freedom and friendship, not just tradition. The quiet night held his promise, as the river flowed with the light of 2 moons, carrying his thoughts into the unknown days to come. The next morning, the village buzzed with whispers about the human and the sisters. Word had spread quickly that Nira had spoken the law to Aaron, claiming him as her right. Some agreed with her, saying it was the way things had always been. Others were uneasy, wondering if the law should reach across the stars to bind someone who was not born of their people. The elders of the village listened but gave no judgment yet. They believed time would reveal what path the matter would take. Aaron felt the change in the air as he walked among the glowing gardens. Children no longer ran freely to him with their playful questions. Adults nodded politely but then turned away, avoiding his eyes. He was now not just a visitor but the center of a quiet storm. Aaron did not like being at the center of attention. Yet he also understood that his presence had stirred something larger than himself. Lyra noticed his silence and sat beside him one afternoon, under the shade of a tall tree with golden leaves. "You look troubled," she said softly. Aaron sighed. "I do not wish to cause trouble here. I only wanted to help when you fell, but now I am told I belong to someone. That is not the way I was taught to live." Her eyes were filled with sadness. "I know. I should have told you earlier about the law, but I was afraid. You are different, Aaron. You act with heart, not with fear of rules. That is why I... Her words trailed off, but her meaning was clear. Nira appeared then, her steps firm and her gaze steady. She had heard enough of their exchange to know where it was leading. She folded her arms and looked at both of them. The law is not a choice, Lyra. It is the bond of our people. Without it, families would fall into chaos. Aaron may not understand, but he is here now and he must accept it. Aaron stood. I cannot accept being treated as property. Respect must come from choice, not law. Where I come from, no person owns another. You may call this honor, but to me it feels like chains. Nira's expression did not change, but her voice grew sharper. You speak as though you know better than generations who came before you. Do you think one man from another world can undo what has kept us whole? Lyra looked between them, her heart pulling in two directions. She respected her sister, who had always guided her with strength, but she also believed Aaron's words carried truth. To her, kindness was more powerful than control, and freedom was a light brighter than tradition. The tension grew until the sound of bells rang from the center of the village. The elders had called a gathering. People moved toward the large hall built from stone and crystal. Aaron followed, unsure of what awaited him, while Nira and Lyra walked on either side, their faces set with different emotions. Inside the hall, the elders sat in a circle, their robes shimmering in the glow of the twin suns. The villagers filled the space, waiting for words of wisdom. The eldest among them, a woman with silver lines across her skin, raised her voice. We have heard the matter of the human and the sisters. A law is clear, yet we face something new. The human is not of our people. Shall the law still bind him? The hall grew silent. All eyes turned toward Aaron. For the first time since his arrival, he felt the weight of every gaze. He stepped forward slowly, his voice steady though his heart beat fast. I respect your world and your customs, but I cannot be owned. I helped because life is precious, not because I wanted to be claimed. If you wish me to leave, I will. But if I stay, let it be as a friend, not as property. Whispers rose around the hall. Some nodded, impressed by his honesty. Others shook their heads, believing his words dangerous. The elder woman lifted her hand and the voices fell quiet. The law has guided us long, yet even laws must face questions when new paths appear. We will not decide today. The suns will set and rise again before we give our answer. The gathering ended, leaving the question hanging in the air. As people walked out, some looked at Aaron with respect, others with suspicion. Lyra walked close to him, her face filled with quiet hope. Nira walked on the other side, her eyes unreadable, carrying the weight of tradition on her shoulders. That night, under the twin moons, the three of them sat in silence near the glowing river. The world around them seemed peaceful, yet in their hearts, storms moved. Aaron thought of freedom, Lyra thought of change, and Nira thought of duty. None of them knew what the elders would decide, but all three knew that their lives had already changed forever. The next day dawned brighter than usual, as if the twin suns wanted to watch closely what would unfold. The village moved with quiet tension, for everyone knew the elders would soon share their thoughts. Until then, people whispered, argued, and wondered what a human's arrival might mean for their ancient law. Some believed change was dangerous, while others felt it was long overdue. Aaron spent the morning near the edge of the village, watching the skies. Birds with crystal wings circled above, their songs ringing like chimes. He thought of Earth and its open skies, where people argued often, but still had the freedom to choose their lives. Here he felt trapped by rules he had never agreed to. Yet he also knew he cared for the sisters who had welcomed him, even if their world was bound by a law that felt strange and unfair. Lyra joined him, carrying a basket of fruits that shone like small lanterns. She sat beside him and placed one in his hand. I thought you might not have eaten, she said softly. He smiled faintly. Thank you. You always think of others first. Her cheeks warmed at his words and she looked toward the glowing horizon. I wish I could do more. The law has always been heavy on me, but I accepted it because I had no choice. Now because of you, I see how unfair it can be. You showed me that not everything must be decided by tradition. Aaron's eyes softened. You have kindness, Lyra. That is stronger than any law. But I fear for you too. If you stand against tradition, will your people turn against you? She shook her head slowly. Perhaps some will. But others might see what I see. Change must begin somewhere. Before Aaron could answer, Nira approached. She carried herself with the calm strength that always marked her presence. She looked at Lyra and then at Aaron. "The elders will speak at sunset," she said firmly. "Until then, I must remind you both. The law does not bend easily. Do not fill yourselves with false hope." Her words were heavy, yet beneath them lay something unspoken. Aaron noticed it but chose silence. He understood that Nira believed in duty above all, yet he also sensed she was struggling within. For if she truly saw him only as property, she would not need to warn him gently. When evening came, the entire village gathered once more in the great hall. The crystals in the walls glowed brighter as the suns dipped low. The elders sat in their circle, their faces calm but serious. The same elder woman with silver lines across her skin raised her hand and the crowd fell into stillness. "We have listened," she began, her voice echoing like music through the hall. "Our law has guided us through ages. It teaches us that the elder protects and the younger is guarded, and through this bond our families have remained strong. Yet now we face one who is not of our kind. The law says the elder claims what the younger values. But can law stretch beyond the roots of our people to cover the stars?" A hush filled the room. The elder turned her gaze to Nira first. "You are the elder sister. Speak your truth." Nira stepped forward, her posture tall. "I honor the law, for it has shaped who I am. My sister holds this human close, and by the law he falls under my right. I do not say this to harm, but because it is our way. Without our way we lose order, yet—" Her voice slowed, and for a moment she hesitated. The hall leaned forward, waiting. "Yet I cannot deny he speaks with reason. He is not of our blood. Perhaps the law should not bind him as it binds us." Whispers swept across the hall. It was rare for Nira, who stood so firmly by tradition, to allow even a shadow of doubt in her words. The elder then turned to Lyra. "And you, younger sister, speak your truth." Lyra's hands trembled, but her voice did not break. "I love my people and I respect our ways. But I believe kindness and choice are stronger than rules that make someone a possession. Aaron saved me because he chose to, not because he was bound. That is true strength. If we bind him, we dishonor the gift he gave when he saved my life." The hall filled with murmurs again, some voices rising with agreement, others with disapproval. Finally, the elder turned to Aaron. "And you, traveler of earth, speak your truth." Aaron stepped into the center, his heart steady. "I came here by chance. I did not know your laws, but I respect your people. Still, I cannot be owned. On my world, freedom is not given by others, it belongs to all. If I stay here, let me stand as a friend, not as property. If that cannot be, I will leave and trouble you no more." The hall fell into deep silence. The elder closed her eyes for a long moment, as though listening to the voices of ages past. When she opened them, her gaze was clear. "At sunrise, we will give our judgment. Until then, let the human remain free, for he has spoken with honesty." The crowd began to disperse, but the weight of the decision still hung in the air. Nira walked out with her head high, yet her heart stirred with thoughts she had never faced before. Lyra walked beside Aaron, her eyes bright with hope. And Aaron himself felt both heavy and light, knowing the fate of his place in this world rested on what the elders would decide when the suns rose again. The night before the decision was heavy with silence. The village lights glowed softly and the stars above spread like silver dust. Most people stayed in their homes, speaking quietly about what the elders might decide. For the first time in many years, a law older than memory was being questioned, and no one knew which way the judgment would fall. Aaron sat near the glowing river, his reflection rippling on the water. He thought about Earth, his family, and the free choices he once had. Here he felt caught between two sisters, two worlds, and two ways of living. He wondered if his presence had only brought trouble to a place that once lived in harmony. Yet when he remembered Lyra's smile and the courage in her voice when she spoke before the elders, he felt a warmth of hope. Lyra joined him quietly, carrying a lantern made of crystal vines. She placed it beside them, and its light mixed with the shine of the river. "I could not sleep," she said softly. "Neither could I," Aaron replied. "Tomorrow everything will change one way or another." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the twin moons. "No matter what they decide, you have already shown us something important. You showed me that laws are not always the same as truth. Even Nira sees it now, though she may not admit it fully." Aaron nodded, though he worried for her. "You spoke with great courage before the whole village. I fear they may judge you for it." "I do not fear judgment anymore," Lyra said with quiet strength. For the first time, I feel free to speak what I believe. If they turn against me, I will still know I spoke with honesty." Their words lingered in the night air, and though they did not speak further, their silence carried comfort. Far away, Neera stood on the balcony of her family's home, gazing at the stars. Her heart was full of conflict. She had always trusted the law, believing it gave order and strength. Yet Aaron's words had stayed with her. He spoke not with rebellion but with calm truth, and it stirred something inside her. She had claimed him by right, but the look in his eyes told her he was no possession. She remembered the fear in Lyra's face when she nearly drowned, and the way Areen had rushed without hesitation to save her. He acted not because of law but because of choice. For the first time, Neera wondered if choice might be stronger than tradition. But duty pressed on her like armor she could not remove. She whispered into the night as though the stars could hear, "What is right, law or freedom?" When dawn came, the village gathered again in the great hall. The air was filled with a strange mix of excitement and fear. People wanted answers, but they also feared what change might mean. The elders sat in their circle once more, their robes shining in the soft light of morning. The silver-marked elder raised her hand for silence. "We have heard the voices of the sisters and the human," she said. "We have weighed the law against truth. Today we must speak with care, for our choice will shape not only this matter but also the path of our people." The hall was so quiet that even the sound of the wind outside seemed far away. Aaron stood calmly, though his heart raced. Lyra's hands were folded tightly, and Neera stood with a face of stone, though her thoughts churned inside. The elder continued, "The law of elder sisters was made to keep peace in our families, but Aaron is not of our blood. He is of another world, another way. To bind him would be to stretch the law beyond what it was meant for. We cannot own what does not belong to our people. Therefore the human shall not be claimed." Gasps filled the hall. Some cried out in agreement, others in shock. The elder lifted her voice higher. "Yet we do not dishonor the law. Among us it still stands. But today we learn that not every tradition can cross the stars. Sometimes the stars bring us lessons too." Lyra's eyes filled with relief, and she turned toward Aaron with a smile bright as morning light. Aaron bowed his head with gratitude, though his heart was still steady with respect. Neera stood still, her expression unreadable. She had defended the law, yet even she felt a weight lift from her chest. Deep within, she knew the decision was fair. When the gathering ended, the village slowly returned to life. Some still murmured their doubts, but many felt a sense of wonder, as if history had shifted before their eyes. Aaron walked out into the sunlight, Lyra beside him. He breathed deeply, feeling for the first time that he truly belonged not as property but as himself. Behind them, Neera followed, her steps slower, her thoughts heavy. She had lost her claim, but she had also gained a question that would not leave her heart. Could it be that freedom and choice were stronger than tradition itself? The morning after the elders' decision was quiet, but filled with a sense of change. The village seemed different, as if the air itself had shifted. People walked with curiosity, some glancing at Aaron with smiles, others still unsure of what the human's presence might mean. Yet there was no fear, only a careful excitement. For the first time, the law had been questioned and adapted, and the ripple of that choice reached far beyond the great hall. Aaron spent the morning walking through the crystal fields, marveling at the colors that glimmered under the twin suns. He had never seen anything like this on Earth. The light bounced off the flowers and water in 1,000 shades, and the air was filled with the gentle hum of alien insects. Though he had faced uncertainty and danger, he felt free now in a way he had not before. Freedom was not just about moving without chains, he realized, but also about being trusted to make one's own choices. Lyra ran to catch up with him, laughing softly. "You walk like a statue," she teased, holding a basket of glowing fruits. "I wanted to bring you something to eat before the sun became too strong." Aaron smiled. "Thank you. The world feels different today. I feel lighter somehow." Lyra sat beside him on a smooth stone by the river. "It is different. The elders made a choice that respects both law and heart. You are free and the law remains, but it bends when it must. Today, we all learn that even old rules can change with wisdom." They spoke for a long while, sharing small stories and dreams. Aaron told her about his home, about the tall mountains and deep oceans of Earth, about schools and libraries filled with books. Lyra shared tales of her village, of the rivers that glowed at night, the forest that whispered secrets, and the way her people celebrated the changing of the moons. Meanwhile, Nira watched them from a distance. She had stepped back since the decision, giving space for the bond between her sister and the human to grow without interference. Her mind, however, was busy with thought. For the first time, she realized that even laws as old as the mountains could be understood differently. She wondered what it truly meant to guide someone with strength. Was it by command or by understanding and respect for their choices? As the day passed, the village slowly returned to normal. Merchants set up their stalls, children played among the crystal flowers, and elders walked quietly, discussing lessons learned from the decision. Aaron noticed that people treated him with curiosity and warmth, but no one looked at him as something to be claimed. It was a new feeling, and it filled him with hope. That evening, the three of them, Aaron, Lyra, and Nira, sat by the river together. The moons had begun to rise, casting silver reflections on the water. Lyra leaned close to Aaron. "I feel like I can finally speak my heart," she said, "and yet I do not wish to see the bond between sisters broken. Nira may have given up her claim, but I know she is thinking deeply about this." Nira's voice came quietly from behind them. "I'm thinking yes, and I am learning. Perhaps law is not only about what is written, but also about what is fair. Perhaps strength comes from understanding, not only obedience." Aaron looked at her, surprised. "You are thinking differently?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. You have shown me that even a rule as old as the mountains can be questioned, and that sometimes the heart must guide what the law cannot." Lyra smiled, relief and hope in her eyes. "Then maybe we can all learn together. Freedom and law can exist side by side if we are careful and kind." The river sparkled beneath the moons as the three of them watched the light dance across the water. Aaron realized that he had found not only friends, but also lessons that would stay with him forever. Nira had strength, Lyra had kindness, and he had courage. Together, they had faced a law older than memory and discovered that fairness, respect, and choice could carry as much weight as tradition itself. That night, the village slept quietly under the glow of the twin moons. For the first time, the people felt that change could come without fear, that questions could exist alongside law, and that friendship and understanding might be stronger than even the oldest traditions. And somewhere along the crystal river, three hearts beat with hope, each learning from the other, each ready to face whatever the days ahead might bring. The following morning, the village was filled with a quiet energy. Birds with crystal wings sang songs that seemed to welcome the new day. Merchants opened their stalls, children ran through the streets, and the twin suns cast long shadows over the glowing fields. Yet beneath the surface, a subtle change lingered. People spoke in softer tones about law, freedom, and the human who had challenged tradition without disrespect. Aaron walked through the village, noticing how the villagers observed him differently. Their eyes held curiosity and respect, not ownership. Children waved and smiled, and some adults even stopped to ask him questions about Earth. He answered patiently, enjoying the simple connection that crossed worlds. For the first time, he felt that he belonged, not by law but by choice and friendship. Lyra joined him near the crystal river. She carried a small bundle of glowing fruits, offering one to him with a shy smile. "I thought you might enjoy these," she said softly. "Thank you, Lyra," Aaron replied, accepting the fruit. "You have a wonderful world here. I feel lucky to be part of it." She looked down at the river, her hands resting on the smooth stone. "Part of it, yes, but we have much to learn. We must find balance between our traditions and what is right, and we must learn to trust choices that come from the heart." Aaron nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand. Even the oldest rules can be adjusted when we realize they may not always bring the right outcome." From behind, Nira approached quietly, her expression thoughtful. She watched her sister and the human with a mixture of pride and uncertainty. "You both speak wisely," she said. "I have learned more than I thought possible in just a few days. Strength is not only following the law, but also seeing when the law may need guidance from kindness." Aaron turned toward her, meeting her gaze. "You have a strong heart, Nira. It takes courage to question a rule you have always trusted." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps courage is only seeing what is true and choosing to do what is right, even if it is difficult. I see now that you are not bound to our law, yet you act with respect and honesty. That is what matters." For a long while, the three of them sat by the river, The wind moved gently through the crystal fields, carrying faint songs of birds and whispers of the village. The river's surface reflected the rising moons, making the water shimmer with silver light. In that quiet, they all felt a sense of connection deeper than words could describe. Later, as the sun reached its highest point, the three began to walk through the village together. People greeted them not with fear or concern, but with warmth. Some even approached Neera to ask how they could learn to balance tradition and fairness. She answered patiently, knowing that the lesson she had learned from Aaron and her sister was now hers to share. Lyra laughed as a small child ran past, carrying a glowing fruit that had fallen from her basket. "Even the smallest hearts learn quickly," she said, smiling at Aaron and Neera. Aaron laughed too, feeling lighter than he had since his arrival. "Yes, and perhaps the smallest hearts teach the oldest minds." Neera glanced at him, her face softening. "You have reminded me that rules are not always the strongest bond. Kindness, respect, and choice are just as powerful. Perhaps more so." By evening, the village gathered for a festival to celebrate the moon's rise. Lights made of glowing vines hung from every tree. Music floated through the air and laughter rang across the fields. For the first time, Aaron felt completely at ease in this world. He was not a guest, not a claim, not a prize, but a friend. As they danced near the river under the silver moons, Neera and Lyra moved gracefully, their steps in perfect harmony. Aaron watched them and realized that even though they had once been divided by law and expectation, their bond was stronger than any rule. Together they had faced uncertainty, tested tradition, and discovered that respect and freedom could coexist. That night, as the festival lights faded and the village settled into quiet, the three of them sat once more by the river. The moons reflected in the water like mirrors, and the stars above seemed to smile down. Aaron felt a deep sense of belonging. Not because of law or claim, but because of trust, courage, and the choice to act with heart. And in the stillness of the night, all three knew that no matter what the future held, they had learned something that would stay with them forever, that even in a world of rules and tradition, love, respect, and freedom could shine brighter than the oldest law. The morning after the festival dawned calm and golden. The village moved gently as if it were still carrying the joy from the night before. Birds with crystal wings flew in patterns across the sky, and the air smelled sweet with the scent of glowing flowers. Aaron walked through the fields with Lyra and Neera beside him. For the first time he felt at home in this world, not as a visitor or a claim of law, but as someone who belonged through friendship and trust. Lyra skipped ahead, picking small glowing fruits and placing them in a basket. "I think the village feels lighter," she said, laughing softly. "People are smiling more. Even the elders look at the skies differently." Aaron smiled. "They have learned what you and Neera have learned. Freedom and kindness can work alongside law, not against it." Neera walked slightly behind, her posture relaxed for the first time in many days. "I have seen that truth can guide law and that choice is as strong as duty," she said quietly. "I still respect our traditions, but I now understand that rules alone cannot measure the value of a life, or the strength of the heart." They walked to the river where Aaron had first saved Lyra. The water shimmered in the morning sun, reflecting both the twin suns and the moons that were now high in the sky. Children played along the edges, their laughter ringing across the valley. Aaron knelt to touch the water, smiling at the simple joy of life moving freely. Lyra sat beside him, her eyes thoughtful. "Do you think the village will continue to accept change?" Aaron nodded. "I do. People will test it, but they will remember today. They saw that honesty, courage, and kindness can guide decisions better than fear or tradition alone." Neera joined them, her gaze on the river. "I will teach the young ones and even some of the elders. They must know that laws are important, but hearts are more important. If we forget that, we forget the reason for our rules." For a long while they sat together in silence, listening to the river and watching the light dance across its surface. The bond between the three had grown deeper than any law could claim. Lyra and Neera, once divided by expectation, now understood the strength of sisterhood when combined with respect for others. Aaron, though not of their blood, had become a part of their lives because of courage and care, not because of any rule. As the day passed, villagers approached them. Some came to ask questions about Earth and Aaron's life there. Others shared their thoughts about how the law could guide without controlling. how rules could be tempered with understanding. Each conversation was a small step in shaping a world where freedom and tradition could live together. By evening, the three walked back to the crystal fields near the village. The twin suns dipped low and the river glowed softly under their light. Lyra looked at Aaron. "I think you changed more than the village," she said, smiling. "You changed us too." Aaron shook his head gently. "I only acted with what was in my heart. You both showed me how to live with respect and courage. You taught me about strength and tradition. I only followed the truth I felt inside." Neera stepped closer, her face softening. "And I have learned that even the strongest law must have room for understanding. You remind us that rules exist to protect, not to possess. That is a lesson we will carry forward." The moons rose high, casting silver reflections across the river. The village was quiet now and the world seemed at peace. The three of them sat side by side, feeling the warmth of friendship, trust, and understanding. They knew the journey ahead would bring challenges, but they also knew they could face them together. Aaron looked at Lyra and Neera, smiling. "I never expected to find a place like this when I arrived. Not just a home, but people who care, who act with honesty and heart." Lyra leaned toward him. "And we never expected to find someone who could remind us that rules are not stronger than friendship and choice." Neera nodded, watching the glowing river. "The law will continue, but we will remember today. We will honor both tradition and freedom. That is the true strength of our world." Under the light of the moons and the glow of the crystal river, the three of them sat together. The past and the future felt balanced, and the world felt brighter than ever. In that quiet, shining place, they understood that kindness, courage, and respect could shape even the oldest traditions. And so, in a world of rules and stars, a human and two sisters had found a new way to live, free, united, and guided by the heart.